Hello everybody, welcome back to the Yotso Tech Tracks YouTube channel. You're joining me on another evening. I'm driving down to work, so I'd like to take this opportunity to make another quick video about some features of this 2016 Ram 1500 pickup truck. Let's talk about transmissions today. As you may or may not know, this is a 2016 Ram 1500 pickup truck. One second, somebody tried to pull out in front of me on a snowy, icy day. People don't know how to stop, but that's okay. Where were we? This is a 2016 Ram 1500 pickup truck, and it's optioned with the 5.7 liter Hemi V8. It has the 65 RFE automatic transmission. This is a 5 or 6 speed automatic, depends how you look at it. And as I mentioned in previous videos, I did purchase this vehicle used, but this is exactly how I would have spec'd out the powertrain, minus the rear axle ratio. It does have the 355 axle ratio, and I would have gone with the 392 had I had the opportunity. I always like to gear my vehicles as low as possible from the factory for many different reasons. To get perfect fuel economy according to the EPA, the vehicles are road tested on basically a dyno in perfect conditions, and those numbers can be met easily in a laboratory, but out in the real world, things are a little bit different. And as far as the payload in the vehicle, the more you carry, the more you're going to be lugging the vehicle down if you have a very high numerical axle ratio. For example, the 321, I believe, is the base. There was a 355 optional, which is this, and another 392, which I would have gone for, but since it doesn't have it, it's not a big deal. Anyway, back to the transmission. This powertrain, the 5.7 liter V8 and the 65 RFE transmission, which this has, was actually in Canada in 2016 the base powertrain, believe it or not. Many times in pickup trucks you get the smaller engine and you have to work your way up to the bigger ones, but in this year particularly, the Hemi V8 with the automatic was the base engine. From there you could go with the, I believe, the Pentastar, which came with the ZF 8-speed automatic, pretty new at around that time into the Ram, FCA Chrysler products. And on top of that, I believe you can pay even more money to get the Hemi back with the 8-speed automatic transmission. So basically you had the V8 with the 6-speed auto. Optional was the Pentastar V6 with the 8-speed combo. That was a package, only one transmission for that engine. And you can also pay a little bit more money to get the V8 with the 8-speed automatic combo. Once again, those were a couple of $1,000 option, which I had no interest in for a couple of reasons I'll get into soon. And I believe one more powertrain option for that model year, which is still pretty much available this year and 2021, is the EcoDiesel, the 3 liter V6 turbo diesel. Once again, I made a previous video about the V8 and why I chose it, why I prefer it in my driving conditions. I have no bias towards any engine, but some of them I do prefer more for, in my eyes, longevity, simplicity, and ease of maintenance, cost of ownership, cost of maintenance, and so on and so forth. I had no interest in getting a diesel. In my opinion, modern day diesels, unless you're using them for their full potential, it is not worth the investment, because you're paying a premium to get them, and everything else associated with them, as far as increased maintenance costs, such as filters, fluids, diesel exhaust fluid. And these modern day diesels, they are riddled with emission components. They are pretty much choked down because of EPA standards, which is the Environmental Protection Agency. Emissions are getting so tight that these engines have to be really, really heavy on EGR and after treatment, such as the urea injection in the exhaust. It is one of those things that it's needed to meet the current emission standards. So it is a very complicated engine as far as mechanicals, electronics, and in the long run, it is something I don't want to deal with. Previously, as I mentioned, in our family, we did have a diesel GMC, which was about 2 decades ago. So those were different times. Engines were simple, reliable for the long run, and very cheap to fix compared to modern days. Anyway, back to the engine and transmission. This powertrain combination is one of my favorites because I previously learned about this transmission in school. I'm a technician, and the Chrysler Mopar transmissions, such as this 65 RFE, was one of the transmissions that we discussed, tore into, rebuilt, basically learned automatic transmissions on. So I'm very familiar with these. These transmissions date back to the muscle car days with the 727 TorqueFlite transmissions. It does have some roots to that, and this is built from the days when the people who worked at FCA do have a lot of carryover with their knowledge and insight when they constructed this transmission. It is basically a 3 or 4 speed automatic with 2 extra overdrives, depends how you look at it. When this first debuted, I believe it came in the 1999 Jeep Grand Cherokee, and as far as I know, it was called the 545 RFE. It is very similar to this current transmission, minus programming and gear selection commanded by the computer. In basic operation, this transmission has 5 forward gears when in drive mode. It has, if I'm not mistaken, 3-to-1 first gear ratio, 1.67-to-1 second, the 1.5-to-1 second prime, which is a kick down gear. Then it goes to a 1-to-1 direct drive, and it has a 0.75 overdrive and a 0.67 overdrive. I'm just going by memory. I'm pretty sure those are correct. In regular driving, basically the shift pattern is 1, 2, 4, 5, and 6. It skips third gear, as it's referred to in this transmission. I believe it was called second prime in the 545 RFE, which is basically not accessible through the electronic range selector in the previous vehicles, but it is in this vehicle if you put it into that, I believe Chrysler calls it manumatic mode. When you want to play around with the gears, with the buttons, plus, plus, and minus, minus, those buttons on the column shifter, you can access it in all forward upshifts. But basically, normal shifting, it goes 1, 2, 4, 5, 6. If you're, example, in 4th gear or 5th gear, and by the engine load and throttle, you're demanding a passing gear, it will kick into that 3rd gear, which is the 1.5 to 1. This is a very unique transmission where, when it first came out, it had a very low first gear. It has a 3-to-1 first gear ratio. Nowadays, it is superseded by many other designs. I believe the ZF has a 4.7-ish to 1 first gear, so the launch gear in that transmission is very deep. However, I prefer something that's very simple, and I grew up with vehicles that basically had 3-speed automatics, 4-speed automatics if you had an overdrive, and in my experience with this kind of a vehicle, with this much power and the gross vehicle rating that you're able to place on this vehicle, I really don't see the need to get into fancy transmissions. Nowadays, other manufacturers have 7 speeds, 8 speeds, 9 speeds, 10 speeds. I hear talks about even 11-speed automatic transmissions coming soon, but it is one thing if you have a very small displacement engine, a very low torque engine. You need a lot more gears. For example, to get the drivability out of it, it's very good thing to have a lot of gears and close ratio spreads, much as in a mountain bike. It's easier to get the load going in pretty much any speed if the engine doesn't have a lot of torque. Modern electronics can quickly find the right gear for you in a couple of milliseconds, and you don't feel the lack of torque, because what's important is wheel torque, how much torque is actually propelling the vehicle through the wheels. Now, this Hemi V8 has, I believe, depends on the specifications, around 410 pound-feet of torque, around 4,000-ish RPM. I'm not sure exactly, but somewhere around there. Anyway, it is a torquey engine, so even if this transmission doesn't have as much gear selection compared to the 8-speed automatic, it is plenty torquey at the wheels because the engine can provide that torque. Once again, this transmission came with engine as a combo. So paying a premium for something as in 3 more speeds is not really a big deal for me. I know the ZF 8-speed automatic is really a good transmission on paper. I have nothing against it. It's just I wouldn't pay money for purchasing it, because in my eyes this transmission and this engine work really nice together. It has very smooth shifting, upshifting, downshifting. It is a modern transmission where it has clutch to clutch shifting. It has no bands to wear out. It has clutch packs, and the clutch volume index is always calculated to have the optimal shift feel for the life of the vehicle. Basically, when the clutch plates wear inside any transmission, in this transmission, such as many modern ones, it is calculated how much volume is required to fill those clutch packs, and as the clutch plates wear, the computer actually commands more fluid into those clutches, so the shift quality, timing, and the shift feel will be the same for the life of the vehicle, whether it has 10,000 kilometers, 50,000 kilometers, or 100,000 kilometers down the road. Another reason I prefer this one over the ZF 8-speed automatic is because this has full flow coolant for the transmission cooling. It is always circulating, and I'm a big believer in keeping automatic transmission temperatures down. As far as I know, the ZF 8-speed automatic does have a thermal bypass valve, which means that it will get hot before it allows cooling. Now you can modify it, you can modify anything. Again, I modify my vehicles extensively, so it is debatable whether you should get into those things or not. One of the first modifications I did to this vehicle is I did put on an extra transmission cooler. I believe that is from B&M. I can list that in the comment sections, in the descriptions if anybody's interested. I believe it is a very high capacity, around 29,000 BTU cooler. The factory did have a nice cooler, but that aftermarket cooler is a lot more, it has a lot more capacity for cooling. So as far as heat dissipation, it's going to meet the demands of this vehicle plus more. As well as the cooler, I placed a dedicated transmission fan in front of it. Transmission cooler fan is just a 12-volt fan I got from Amazon. I'll put it in the description if anybody's interested in that. This is an add-on I added because to get into vehicle commands where I can make this engine computer kick that fan on is very difficult with these vehicles. These computers are encrypted from the factory, and it is not as simple as tuning or flashing CAN tune on it. I believe the vehicle needs to have the computer removed and shipped off to an aftermarket provider where they can modify the computer. For example, if you want another pinout for controlling a fan, you could do that, but it gets costly, and my solution is just simply a 12-volt switch. It drives a relay, and the relay turns on the fan. I usually turn that on in the summer when I'm pulling a trailer, and I keep an eye on my transmission temperatures constantly. I watch those numbers like a hawk. If anything is high, I view it right away. I'm not surprised by overheating or anything like that that would actually hinder the life of the vehicle. I believe in keeping temperatures down as much as possible. Again, this is debatable, but as far as transmission fluid temperatures go, the cooler you can keep them, the better they are at a certain point. When you look at the viscosity numbers, around 20-25 degrees Celsius, modern automatic transmission fluids such as this ATF Plus 4 has plenty of flow. Viscosity is right around where you want it to be, and anything higher than that, it is going to hurt the life of the transmission, because there's a lot of rubber parts inside any automatic transmission. There's a lot of Viton or Teflon seals. The clutch packs in most of these transmissions, it doesn't matter what manufacturer you go with, they are basically a paper back clutch pack. That means it is nothing but a really high quality paper that soaks up the transmission fluid, and it is paper pushing on steel plates. It's sandwiched together, for example, steel, paper, steel, paper, steel, paper, and when computer commands a solenoid to direct fluid flow to that clutch pack, it is basically going to clamp that clutch back together and absorb the friction through heat, and that is what provides the clutch-to-clutch shifting from first gear to second gear to so on and so forth. These parts are sensitive to heat, and anything excessive is going to basically hurt the life of the transmission. The closer you can keep the minimum and the maximum temperatures, the better for the life of any transmission. You have to see what temperature, for example, your transmission is when it is parked overnight, and the maximum temperature it reaches in day-to-day driving. If you can keep that number down, it's going to extend the transmission's life, who knows how much, 10, 20, 100,000, 200,000 kilometers. That's debatable on which manufacturer, but that is reality. The reason manufacturers provide very high temperatures for modern transmissions is nothing to do with longevity. It is to do with fuel economy standards. They want to get all the temperatures very high for different reasons, but one of the reasons is to get very good viscosity, so you have very little frictional loss. Again, these manufacturers can meet they can basically meet the warranty running it this way, and once the warranty expires, no matter what vehicle you have, it is your problem. So as far as I go, I'm proactive into addressing problems before they happen, instead of having to deal with issues that I could have prevented years ago, hundreds of thousands of kilometers ago. So that is the reason I personally always, one of the first modifications I do to any automatic transmission is put a cooler on it. And like I said, in this transmission is very easy because it did have a factory cooler up front, and all I had to do was remove that and install a larger capacity cooler to dissipate more heat. In the ZF 8-speed automatic, as far as I know, I'm pretty sure I'm right about this, even if you put on a larger cooler, it is not going to come into play until that thermal bypass valve opens at whatever temperature, 50, 60, 70, 80 degrees Celsius, whatever that might be. Some manufacturers are higher, some manufacturers lower. However, they want to get the temperature up as quickly as possible for the best fuel economy possible. Again, it's a trade-off. You're going to save a little bit of fuel, yes. I understand the 8-speed automatic is more fuel efficient. Basically, it has very close ratios, and it locks up the converter in, I believe, second gear all the way up to 8, even some cases first gear. But it is one of those things where down the road, when that thing falls apart, which everything will, no matter what, you have a mechanical component, it is going to wear out. It doesn't matter if it's a Chevrolet, a Honda, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, or a Hyundai. When things wear out, it is going to be a lot more costly to replace or rebuild the ZF transmission than this 65 RFE. This is an inexpensive transmission. It is tried and tested. It has been on the market for many, many years. It requires the Mopar ATF Plus 4 synthetic transmission fluid, which you can get through Chrysler for not too much, around $10 a liter. And it is much, much, much cheaper, for example, than the fluid in the ZF transmission. I know it's a special fluid. When they first came out, the prices were ridiculous. I'm sure down the road, the prices are going to go down. However, the prices of this one will also go down, because that's how the market is. If something goes up, everything goes up. If something goes down, it will follow suit. So this one is very easy to service. It is a very simple design. I believe it has 3 planetary gear sets. Nothing complicated. It is designed for, in the beginning, I believe it was designed for the Jeep Grand Cherokee with the high output 4.7 liter overhead cam engine, and it meets the torque output of this Hemi engine. So it is not weak in this design. Again, for the gross vehicle weight rating that you can put on this half-ton pickup truck, it is not the weak link in the system. Again, this transmission, as in the ZF 8-speed, starting in second gear and up, so second, third, fourth, fifth, and sixth, it does lock the converter to keep the temperatures further down. And it is a really good design. Depends who you talk to. It has issues. Then again, everything has issues, but this is a 2016 vehicle, and pretty much all the bugs are worked out of it. I'm hoping to get many, many years of service out of it. I've never had a vehicle with an automatic transmission failure. Once again, one of the reasons is I don't push it, I don't abuse it. I try to always let off the throttle a little bit before the shift comes, and that way you're going to pretty much extend the life of the transmission to basically you never have to worry about it. You're not putting so much heat, so much torque through those clutch packs. So that's another thing people tend to do to make sure you don't have any equipment failure down the road. Well, that was my view on why I got this transmission. I'm very happy with it. It is very smooth, very imperceptible. The shifts are crisp, quick. Downshifts are quick. It has no complaints as far as the gear ratios go. It does, as I mentioned, shift up through all the gears as programmed. First, second, fourth, fifth, and sixth gear. And another thing about the ZF 8-speed, it does have a skip shift ability. So you're not always using all those gear ratios. For example, depending on the throttle input, you could have a first gear, a second gear, then a fourth gear, then a sixth gear shift pattern. There's a lot of variables, so you're not always using all those 8 speeds, depending on your torque demand by your right foot, how much you want of it. In everyday driving, it is pretty much a wash between the two of them. Performance-wise, yes, it will get the vehicle going down faster the road because it has a deeper first gear. I believe 8 speed in the ZF is the same as the 6-speed ratio in this 65 RFE. So highway driving, if you have the equal axle ratio on both of them, you're going to get equal fuel economy. It is depending on your axle ratio, but then again, that depends on how you spec out the truck. If you want a 321 axle ratio for maximum fuel economy, if the vehicle is not heavily loaded, that's fine. You can get a 392 for maximum pulling power, maximum towing capacity, maximum performance, that's fine. I'm actually happy with this 355 axle ratio. One of the reasons I would have gone with the 392 because I do tend to modify most of the vehicles I have, and putting larger tires on it would put a less of a strain on the powertrain. It'll get everything going easily. You have more torque at the wheels, so everything goes easier down the road. Anyway, I'm happy with my decision about this powertrain. I hope this gives some insight to other people. This is Yotso from Yotso Tech Tracks, and thank you for watching, and more content is coming soon to this channel whenever I can. So thank you very much for listening or watching if you're watching it on YouTube, and see you next time. Bye bye.